Your case, Mr. Cobra. The floor is yours, sir.
Thank you very much. First, I'd like to thank the court and the Honorable Judge Gore for allowing the prosecution this opportunity to stand up for Star Wars, George Lucas's Star Wars. Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, today we are going to talk about a crime, but not just any crime, a crime 30 years in the making, a crime that spans generations, a crime so disgusting and motivation so deceiving that when we are done, without a shadow of a doubt, you will understand the pain and the suffering that has been caused to fans all around the world. Disney and Lucasfilm executives set out to destroy a fandom and decades of storytelling and passion. They decided to focus on 3 of the most iconic characters we have ever seen in entertainment. Why? Because you, the fan, loved those characters. It's because you loved them, and that was unacceptable to the powers that be. At first, they used our nostalgia to pull us in. A very disgusting and devious practice. We have video evidence of Kathleen Kennedy, president of Lucasfilm, lying straight to George Lucas's face. We have quotes from Bob Iger talking about how George Lucas himself felt used after the fact. We have quotes from George Lucas talking about how he sold the company to white slavers. We have evidence, indisputable evidence, of writers being fired because they focused too much on legacy characters. Legacy characters. The characters that you loved, the characters that you were interested in, people were fired because they wanted to focus a Star Wars story on those characters. That's what we're talking about today. We are going to talk about everything from the beginning. Disney and Lucasfilm never cared about growing or complementing this universe. They only wanted to hijack it and destroy it, they did, unfortunately. I am simply a humble Star Wars fan. I grew up loving Luke Skywalker in a galaxy far, far away. Luke Skywalker was the standard for me when he looked over and saw those twin suns. It hit me and millions of other fans in ways that I can't properly describe. It was magic. It was Star Wars. We, the fans, gave Lucasfilm every opportunity, and they took it. They took our goodwill and they spit in our faces. And then when we complained about the spit in our face, they blamed us for the spit that was in our face. We will never forgive them for what they did to us. We wanted to see our hero, Luke Skywalker. We wanted to see our princess. We wanted to see our favorite scoundrel become the man that we always knew he would become. Instead, we got old, depressed, and angry shells of what our heroes once were. A crime has certainly been committed, and the people responsible will pay, and justice will be served. Thank you for allowing me these opening statements. Now we have some video to talk about, and it is going to let you see just how terrible these people are. Some of them are in the courtroom today. And Mr. J.J. Abrams, I understand that there's probably too many white men on the panel today, and you're probably a little uncomfortable. And I just want you to know we're all happy you're uncomfortable. But let's show you some of this video evidence that we have right here. And we're going to start out with something that's just so disgusting to watch. And I'm sharing my screen right now. This is really awful, what I'm about to show you. This is video evidence of Kathleen Kennedy lying to George Lucas. I'm sharing my screen now for the court. If the court could share my screen, be much appreciated. Here we go right here. This is when the announcement was made that George Lucas was selling to Lucasfilm and appointing Kathleen Kennedy. Listen to the language. You will feel exactly like I do after this video.
I always said I wasn't going to do any more, and that's true, so I'm not going to do any more. But that doesn't mean I'm unwilling to turn it over to Kathy to do more. I have story treatments of 7, 8, and 9 and a bunch of other movies, and obviously we have hundreds of books and comics and everything you could possibly imagine. So, I sort of moved that treasure trove of stories and various things to Kathy, and I have complete confidence that she's going to take them and make great movies. I'm doing this so that the films will have a longer life, and so that more fans and people can enjoy them in the future. It's a very big universe I've created, and there's a lot of stories that are sitting in there.
The main thing is to protect these characters, make sure that they still continue to live in the way that you created them.
The main thing is to protect these characters. Disgusting lies, pulling in our nostalgia and making promises that they cannot keep. And I stand before you today in 2023, and everyone that has watched Disney Star Wars understands that was a lie. That was a lie, and we all know it. Let's let the lies continue.
And that the universe of Star Wars continues to grow.
I just said that I would back her up, and I would be there if and especially helping with the script and making sure the script sort of, there's a lot of blank spots in the story treatment that we can fill in. And
I think the incredible thing about George is, this is not like a series of books like Harry Potter where you've already got a template of what the stories might be. These are original stories and original ideas that come out of a world that essentially is in George's head. So the beauty of the collaboration that can continue is as we work our way through these scripts, if we're sitting and saying, I wonder if this character can do that, or does this make sense within the rules of Star Wars? It really, he's the keeper of the flame when it comes to that.
He's the keeper of the flame when it comes to that, talking about relying on George and his creativity and his genius to continue to help them develop Lucasfilm and Star Wars. Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, I want you to remember these quotes from Kathleen Kennedy as we continue to compile the evidence to show you the devious nature of what Lucasfilm and Disney has done, the lies and the disgusting behavior. Let's continue on.
It's the same thing with the first three films. That's all my job is to be the keeper of the flame. Well, it's based on human behavior, human psychology, mythology, which is the sort of archaeology of human behavior and thinking. And since it has those motifs, it is very universal, and everybody can relate to it. It's about good and evil in us, as well as our institutions.
Mm-hmm.
So, and the idea that some of us think we're really great people, but in the real world we're not. We're terrible people.
Or you can make bad choices.
Well, you make bad choices, but you...
Oh, yes, we can, George, can't we? We can make bad choices. There's one sitting right across the table from you
run
there.
Your life in a very selfish way, and you think you're doing good when you're actually not. And at the same time, it's how do democracies turn back into dictatorships? Why do people who have the power to have the freedom turn it over to somebody who's going to take it all away from them? It's happened through history forever and ever. And all Star Wars is a way of updating that idea to say, watch out, because there are people out there who don't play by the rules. And if you're not careful, you're going to lose all your freedom. And at the same time, those people who may not play by the rules because they're selfish and greedy turn themselves into evil people who don't care about other people.
There you go.
Very interesting language there used by the great George Lucas, the creator of Star Wars. Now, this was made around the time that the purchase of Disney and Lucasfilm was made. Again, keeping George on, using his creativity, using his genius. We want to talk to George about decisions on characters, things like that. All of these promises were made in order to manipulate the fans into believing that this was done for the right reasons. But again, I remind you, ladies and gentlemen of the jury, negligence is what's at stake here. Negligence. And how they treated the legacy characters. I have more video for you, and it is really, really disgusting, but we have more. This is the great George Lucas after the fact, after seeing what Disney had done. Now remember, promises to honor George, honor his characters, honor the legacy, utilize George, talk to George, get his opinions, all of his feedback, get his stamp of approval. That didn't happen, ladies and gentlemen, because lies were told to you, to me, and to everyone that loves Star Wars. Here we go. The audio might be a little low on this. I'll try to bump it up.
Let me just talk about the upcoming Star Wars, The Force Awakens. How do you feel about it?
Well, it's, I made the decision to sell the company, Star Wars. I made that decision because I looked at the future. I looked at the fact that I was going to have a baby. I looked at the fact that I was married. And I looked at the fact that I wanted to build a museum. and I looked at the fact that I wanted to make experimental films. So my life was going on a different track. I noticed the last few movies that I'd made were costing the company a lot of money, and I didn't think that was fair to the people that worked there or the company. And so I had made a decision to move ahead on the next Star Wars series, and we were starting to do that.
So you were starting to make the next Star Wars.
Yeah.
You as director, filmmaker.
So, and we were working with a writer. It wasn't quite working out, but I was also, you know, I was also stepping away a little bit and turning things over to Kathy Kennedy. And so what happened was Disney said, gee, or Bob Iger said, gee, if you really want to sell your company, if you're thinking about selling it, because we were talking about retirement and what are you going to do after all this kind of stuff. And he said, well, if you really want to sell it, you know, we're very interested. So that started that ball rolling.
So George didn't go to Disney. Disney came to him, showing the deceptive nature from the beginning, trying to take full advantage of George.
And I knew from, you know, and I had the story treatments or, you know, outlines, and we were working on scripts. And so I sold it. But I knew when I sold it, I said, I've tried to make movies where I step away, just sort of Empire and Return of the Jedi.
Right.
And after about a couple of weeks, I knew I couldn't do that. I had to stand over the shoulder of the director, help him, you know, whisper in his ear constantly, no, do this, do that, you know, and be there to help guide it. And it was much harder than if I had just directed it myself.
J.J. Abrams.
J.J. Abrams, he's a good director and he's a good friend.
J.J. Abrams, who is with us today, George Lucas considered a good friend at the time. We will follow up on
All
that.
this sort of thing. But he's also a top director, company, his own company, all this other stuff. And Disney, who was a little nervous. You know, there's one of the issues was the first three movies had all kinds of issues. They looked at the stories and they said, we want to make something for the fans. So I said, all I wanted to do was tell a story of what happened. You know, it started here and it went there. And it's all about generations, and it's about, you know, the issues of fathers and sons and grandfathers. And it's a family soap opera.
A family soap opera, and according to George Lucas himself, Disney said they wanted to make something for the fans. Again, deceptive behavior, using language that was not true, but it meant to pull people in from a nostalgic standpoint. You know, manipulating people, gaslighting people. This has been their method since the beginning. And as we continue to show you this evidence, although at this time, ladies and gentlemen of the jury, I think you can already see the case that the prosecution is laying out for you is indefensible. You can't defend what we are seeing right now. This is disgusting, but Star Wars is important enough to show you all of the crimes committed by Disney and Lucasfilm, and we are going to do that. It's going to be uncomfortable to some. Some people in the audience right now maybe have tears in their eyes remembering what Disney did to them, causing emotional damage. And I feel for all of you. My heart goes out to every single one of you that is having an emotional response to this. And I apologize for having to bring the pain of what Disney and Lucasfilm did to you. I apologize for having to make you relive that. But in order to bring the people responsible to justice, we have to go through this process. But just understand that we as George Lucas Star Wars fans, we're here for you, and we're going to wrap our arms around you. Let's continue on.
I mean, ultimately, I mean, we call it space opera, but people don't realize it's actually a soap opera. And it's all about family problems and it's not about spaceships. So they decided they didn't want to use those stories. They decided they were going to go do their own thing. And so I decided, fine. But basically, I'm not going to try to, they weren't that keen to have me involved anyway. But at the same time, I said, I'm not going to, if I get in there, I'm just going to cause trouble. Because they're not going to do what I want them to do. So, and I don't have the control to do that anymore. And all I would do is muck everything up. So I said, okay, I will go my way and I'll let them go their way. And it really does come down to a simple rule of life, which is when you break up with somebody, The first rule is no phone calls. The second rule, you don't go over to their house and drive by to see what they're doing. The third one is you don't show up at their coffee shop or the things what you're going to run in. You just say, no, gone, history, I'm moving forward. Because every time you do, and we all learn this from experience, every time you do something like that, you're opening the wound again. And it just makes it harder for you. You have to put it behind you, and it's a very, very, very hard thing to do. But you have to just cut it off and say, okay, end the ball game. I got to move on. And everything in your body says, don't, you can't. And these are my kids. So
All those Star Wars.
all the Star Wars films.
They were your kids.
Yeah, well, they are right. I love them. I created them. I'm very intimately involved in them, and obviously to
And
sell
you
them off.
sold them.
I sold them to the white slavers that take these things and.
But having said all,
Sold them to the white slavers. Now, again, George Lucas considers these Star Wars films his children. So that means that George Lucas had trust when he made this deal with Disney and Lucasfilm. He had trust and he had faith that they were going to do the right things. And now you see with this interview, we see a much different George Lucas than the moment that we saw earlier. And at this moment, this is a man who has realized that the people that have control of his universe don't actually care about his universe. And it's really, really disgusting. For the benefit of time, we're going to slow that one down and not show the rest of that one. We got a few more right here. This is a quick moment right here where Kathleen Kennedy and J.J. Abrams, one of the gentlemen that is here in the courtroom today, they talk about George like he's not there. Here we go.
Question.
I guess because it spoke to a new generation. It was that idea that there would be young people for whom Luke Skywalker was essentially a myth.
There isn't a day that goes by or went by as we were making the movie where we don't talk about George. It's the standard, what would George do? One of the things that we talked about.
Now, I'm going to refrain from using profanity in the court today out of respect for the court. But when I hear language like that, when George Lucas himself is alive and you can contact him at any point in time, but you're sitting there pretending like you can't even find him because he's dead, disgusting. But it just continues to show the disrespect. Even Mark Hamill agrees with the disrespect.
When I read 8, I told Ryan, I fundamentally disagree with virtually everything you've decided about my character. But, other than that, I can't really describe more, but
says he fundamentally disagrees with everything Rian Johnson did with the character in episode 8. Here's another line from
get
Mark
with,
Hamill.
and I think he has more leeway to really mess things up. It's Colin Trevorrow that's going to have to tie all the loose ends together.
I mean, you talked about the reaction to the first script, obviously, that funny kind of thing about waiting for Luke to appear,
Right.
etc. What was your reaction when you finally got a chance to read this one? Were you satisfied and excited in terms of how integral Luke is and was to the story? Were you surprised by what Ryan chose to do?
Yes, I was very surprised. And I have to tell you, and I should have realized that when I read 7, I said, I love everybody's part except mine.
There we go. Everybody's part except mine. We have a couple more now. Honorable Judge Gore, seeing as I'm the only person on the prosecution side, am I allowed at least another few minutes to present my case?
Just a few minutes, Mr. Cobra. And then additionally, I want to let you know you showed a video with Mr. Abrams. You do have Mr. Abrams here, and
Yes.
you will be subject to cross-examination
Absolutely.
after your presentation concludes. Please continue.
Absolutely. Okay, let me show you this one really quick. This is Harrison Ford talking about the Solo movie. Here's his response.
Are you looking forward to watching a Han Solo movie as a fan?
Not really.
So clearly, good old Harrison Ford. And the last video evidence I want to show is from a great YouTuber by the name of Jeremy Johns talking about Bob Iger's book. And listen to what Bob Iger, after the fact, said about George Lucas.
What's it called? I don't know the name of the book. Bob Iger, My Journey, or something. Bob Iger, My Farts Smell Like Roses. I'm sure it's called that. And in one of these chapters in this book, the chapter, again, I don't know the name of the chapter, so we'll just call it That Time We Butt Fucked George Lucas and then made him smile at our faces at Star Wars Celebration. Again, not called that. I'm making shit up. But this next part I'm not making up. In Bob Iger's book, Bob Iger, who's the CEO of Disney, for those of you who don't know, he's the guy who owns the Monopoly board. He's that kid you don't want to play with because you're like, you own everything. Fuck you. Anywhere I land, I'm screwed. Point is, Bob Iger straight up says George Lucas felt betrayed by what they did with Star Wars. All right, I'm going to go ahead and put a link.
So there you go, right there. A lot of video evidence to show you what we have been through as Star Wars fans. And again, ladies and gentlemen of the jury and our wonderful audience out there, I know that was an emotional journey for many of you. It was an emotional journey for me as well. Not easy to watch and relive all of that, but necessary to get to the point where we need to go. So that is the prosecution's case against Disney's Star Wars. I thank you very much for allowing me the opportunity to present this to all of you.